Some of us may have heard of Temple Grandin. She's known as the woman who thinks like a cow. Now, I don't know of too many women, in fact, I don't know of any who would take that as a compliment. But Temple Grandin does. You see, Temple Grandin is a renowned consultant to the livestock industry. She's the professor of animal science at Colorado State University, and she's an autism spokesperson. And what makes all this even more incredible is the fact that Temple Grandin is autistic. She didn't learn to speak until she was 4 years old. They said she would never talk, of course would never go to school, and she has a PhD in animal science. Because of her autism, Temple says that she can remember being fearful of everything in her surroundings. Any noise she heard, a bell, a whistle, too many voices talking at one time in a room, a clanging piece of metal, anything like that, you name it, and she was afraid of it. But when she was just a girl, she visited a kinfolk's ranch, cattle ranch in Arizona. And while she was there, she saw them working cattle in a squeeze chute. And she noticed that many of the cattle calmed down and just became settled when they're in that squeeze chute. Now, I realize you don't need to put a note in there. I know they don't all do that. Ray and Dominique Lane told me about a time they were working cattle in a squeeze chute. Dominique had the medicine in the needle ready to go, and this one didn't calm down, and the needle went in Dominique's arm, nearly killed her. And she made it through. But most of the time, Temple would notice those cattle would go into that chute gate, and when the pressure was applied, they'd just calm down. And she did two things with what she learned. The first thing she did is she developed a lifelong love of and study of the behavior of cattle and other large animals. So much so that her thesis, The Safe Handling of Large Animals, has changed the way that many cattlemen and cattlewomen work their cattle. They're doing so in such a way that as the fear level goes down among those cattle, the weight gains, the reproduction rates, and the quality of the beef have skyrocketed. In fact, over half of the meat packing plants, the slaughterhouses actually, over half of them are using systems and techniques that Temple Grandin, autistic Temple Grandin, designed. They're using them today. And that's what she did. She taught people that as fear went down, large animals like cattle and you and me thrive better. We just simply do better in every way when we're in an environment of care rather than an environment of fear. You see, cattle can be conditioned to be fearful or unfearful. If they're in a situation that reminds them of past harm or pain, or if they're in a situation that their instincts as a prey animal put them on alert and they're not sure about something, then their fear level is going to go up. And they're going to be a danger to themselves, and they're going to be a danger to others. And because of her autism, Temple knew that. Because she thinks the way that animals think. Her mind works that way. And so she had to understand that and came to understand it. The second thing she did with what she learned is she designed for herself to get through the stress of college, being fearful of everything. She designed a hug box, she called it, that was designed for her and others with autism along the lines of a cattle squeeze chute. And when things would get too tough for her, she'd get in her squeeze chute, and that pressure would calm her down and calm her fears. You see, Temple understood something that we all need to understand today. We either control our fears or our fears control us. Because of her autism, she had lived a life of fear. But today, Temple Grandin lives a life of love and care and relationships. In fact, she stated that she hasn't used her hug box in years. It broke, she said, and she just decided not to fix it because she's into hugging people now, which if you've ever known anybody with autism, they can't do. She couldn't even hug her mother for many, many years, couldn't let any human touch her. And yet now she's into loving relationships because she's discovered how to move from fear into loving relationships of care. Today on Father's Day, what we're going to do is we're going to continue our 8 Gates in Romans 8 series. It's an exploration of this, perhaps the greatest chapter in the Bible. And today we're going to look at the chute gate, that entrance to that squeeze chute. And we're going to talk about how you can move and I can move out of fear and into the great big hug of a loving father's care. It's in Romans chapter 8, verses 15 through 17, if you choose to follow along there.